Today on the Topping Show, Zohran Mamdami won while Omar Fateh lost the recent elections. Ben Shapiro is ratioed hard as he criticizes Tucker Carlson for interviewing Nick Fuentes. Leftists say that fat levels are based on privilege. Tremec makes a 6-speed manual transmission for the C8 Corvette. And Kroger recalls candles because, whoops, they're just too flammable. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency IT security. Heck, I see our founder at least twice a day, guys. He's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, reach out to the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, still giving away a free flamethrower with every IT purchase with Picatinny rail adapters, so you can mount it to any standard AR-15 like all awesome accessories can be. Go to toppingtechnologies.com and click the flamethrower button to learn more and see me shooting a flamethrower. And lastly, trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you can click that button and tell your friends and your enemies, I would greatly appreciate it. Now going over to the business part of the podcast, has some good news. Tremec makes a 6-speed manual transmission for the C8 Corvette, which many would say is long overdue, though still, again, does not, doesn't really give GM any credit because, again, Tremec is a different company. Now, this is brought to us thanks to Andrew Collins over at thedrive.com, and he says, quote, "This new 6-speed manual could fit the C8 Corvette and Ford Mustang GTD. Tremec has released a 6-speed manual transaxle designed to sit the same mounting points as its TR9080 DCT and the Chevrolet Corvette C8 and Mustang GTD." And there refutes the long bullcrap rumor from General Motors when they said, oh yeah, with the new C8 Corvette, we just couldn't fit a manual transmission. It just wouldn't fit in the car. Which at the time, I called and critiqued them thoroughly. I think I didn't say balderdash because I'm not British. I think I said bullshit. Because it is ridiculous. And it is an abomination that the C8 Chevrolet Corvette only comes with an automatic transmission, a soulless, boring machine. Now, I'm a little biased. I've only ever owned 3 pedals, also known as manual transmission, in all my vehicles. Granted, small sample sized. I've only owned 2 cars, but nevertheless, the fact that GM killed the stick shift for the C8, the 8th generation of the Chevrolet Corvette, is an abomination, and Mary Barra should have been fired with extreme prejudice. Ridiculous. Again, ever since Corvette was introduced when it was introduced in 1953, it had a straight 6 engine, put that in the BMW, and automatic. But again, I believe it was 1958, with a couple years later, they got a V8, and from that era onward, they always had the option for a manual transmission, and the take rate, as in the rate at which people purchased the manual transmission option, usually varied from 15 to 25% every year, on average. Now again, some years even higher, some years lower. That's not an insignificant number. There are enthusiasts who love having 3 pedals, also known as a manual transmission. Porsche has proved that people are willing to pay a premium. The Carrera T, which again is the cheapest Porsche 911 they can get with a stick shift option, is a Carrera T. It starts at $135,000, or also known as like a whole house in Iowa. It's really expensive and people are willing to pay for it. The GT3, people pay $300,000 for a Porsche with a stick shift. Now, again, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Maserati, the old legacy super sports cars brands, they've all acquiesced to the soulless automatic transmission decades ago, in fact. And Corvette used to be America's car. It used to be amazing. It used to be a great value to the consumer. I still remember as a kid going to the Chicago Auto Show, surprisingly enough, not getting shot, and we saw there was the 2009 Chevrolet Corvette ZR1, the fastest, most expensive, greatest vehicle GM had ever made. It only came with, you're right, you're thinking what I'm thinking, yep, it only came with a stick shift. It was a huge part of the community. When you go to the track, you see Corvettes, more often than not, they have the stick shift. And again, yes, I know it's not as fast as automatic transmission. Obviously, it's been that way since the 80s, but it's a fun option to have, especially when you're at the track. And there are a lot of old souls, and truth be told, some of the younger folks are getting into manual transmissions. The fact that GM killed it completely is ridiculous. And now, granted, this is not going to be a factory option yet. Maybe it will. Now, Tremec just came out with this. Now, again, this is credit to Andrew Collins at thedrive.com. And here you can see the Corvette right there and the transmission on the right. And he says, quote, "Tremec, a major OEM and aftermarket transmission supplier, has announced something that I know folks have been dreaming of, a high-performance 6-speed manual that could fit the C8 Corvette. More specifically, this has new transaxle uses the same basic housing shape and mounting points as the Tremec TR9080 8-speed dual clutch automatic. It's standard in all Corvettes, which a soulless boring experience using paddle shifters. Pathetic. My friend got a Mitsubishi Lancer in high school, and I made fun of him because, again, it had paddle shifters. Again, it was a fancy new car, so he liked it. Most of the guys thought it was cool and hip. But I still thought, lame. The coolest car I got driving in high school was my buddy's actually Dodge SRT8. Or SRT4, sorry. It was a Dodge Neon tricked out with a factory, 4-banger turbo, stick shift option only. That was a fun car to drive. But even back then, consistency is shown for decades. I make fun of those stupid little paddle shifters. Let it be known. That'll be a small hill I'll die on, or a soapbox, perhaps. Now, again, they say the transaxle could also be used in the Ford Mustang GTD. To be clear, don't count on Chevrolet or Ford adding a manual transmission to the factory option list on either of the cars we just mentioned. Tremec is pitching this new 6-speed directly to custom car builders and racing teams. Unquote. Epic fail. If GM was smart, they're not. They would say, wait a minute. We're lazy and stupid. We didn't spend the research dollars. It looks like you did. Well, we'll do that. We'll do what the consumers would love. The consumers would appreciate. Again, the only stick shift you can get now is General Motors and Infinite more. I was about to say, what's the opposite of wisdom? Foolishness. They killed the Cadillac CT4V Blackwing. So if you found a stick shift vehicle from General Motors, the last option was the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing. Now, again, they've just confirmed the CT5 will be again around for another year. We don't know if this is going to be a Blackwing option or even a stick shift option. There should be. Again, the fact that GM killed the Camaro and basically killed the Corvette is sad and ridiculous. But again, if GM was smart, they'd see this in the newspaper, or maybe a Tremec rep reach out to them and go, you know what? Maybe we'd make this a new Corvette Grand Sport. Maybe do add this option to the highest level car. People would buy it. It's ridiculous that they haven't. Now, again, they say, quote, Tremec designed the transaxle to utilize the TR9080 DCT mounting points with a similar case profile. This allows builders to use the already available factory Corvette components for faster installation, the brand stated in a press release. Tremec is stylized. Here you can see a little picture of it installed here. And they say, quote, Tremec is utilizing in all caps because it's a pseudo acronym for, geez Louise, good luck pronouncing this, Transmisiones y Equipos Mexicanos. It's founded in Mexico, 1964. The company started doing truck transmissions, but is now well established in the high-performance space. Tremec designed the 8-speed dual-clutch TR9080 transaxle used in the Corvette and Mustang GTT. Yeah. The transmission and transaxle are conceptually the same, but mechanically different. If you're unfamiliar with these terms, basically the transmission is what gets engine power to the different axles, ultimately the wheels, but then you have transaxle, and the trans and differential are in one unit. Scroll down a little bit more to see more. No shipping date or price has been announced yet for Tremec's new 6-speed, but it's not a concept. Tremec's releases makes it pretty clear that it's going into production, and while it should physically fit into the C8 or GTT, is getting worked properly will require a custom engine control software, and of course, fitting a shifter and clutch pedal into the cabin, which might be a significant challenge with mid-engine Corvettes. They said here's some basic images. And again, for the right car, the driver will make it work. They say, I suspect this will mostly be caught for custom racing vehicles and maybe some high, big dollar custom street cars. Not any work at the factory for OEM validation to become factory option, but still, how cool is it to hear about? Which, yeah. Now, this is a crazy cool part in terms of the horsepower. Oh, I mean, this is a full-time component here. They say estimated input torque rating of 800 foot-pound of torque, 1,000 horsepower, and impressive maximum engine capability of 8,600 RPM. They say the gear shifts controlled via cable. It connects to the shift mechanism on the left side transaxle. Mechanically limited slip. Multiple plate clutch with concentric sleeve cylinder and clutch actuation. Gear lubrication and cooling supply via a Jordan pump driven off the transaxle input shaft. Again, they say it's going to be used in a variety of builds and engine combinations. And again, it has the TR9080 DCT mounting points. So this is really cool to see. Now, again, what the price point this will come at? That'll be the interesting variable. Again, custom shops is, I think it's fair to say, now again, I'm not sure this is a good business idea, but it is a business idea, not very original. I mean, there's going to be a huge aftermarket community of people buying these up and fixing those factory bastardized Corvettes that only have 2 pedals. Again, software, in terms of research development, in terms of manufacturing, not too bad. It's all pixies in the computers. I'm like partially kidding. Obviously, there's source code. It's put in the cloud. Don't get me started. But in terms of research development, making the actual hardware, it's all mostly right there. You want to make this work for the Corvette, that is going to be so cool. And I don't think GM is smart enough to listen and actually make this a factory option. They should. Porsche has proven the market is there, and people are willing to pay a premium for that. Now, especially unique here, the new Chevrolet Corvette, debatably in terms of good or bad, it's a rear engine mounted vehicle. Some would say it's an abomination. The engine should be in front, just as the horses were in front of the chariot, as God intended. But again, there's a huge community of people who love the rear engine. I mean, GM's trying to rip off Ferrari for years in terms of stylization and making it sportier, trying to compete in that realm. But again, if you want a rear engine with a stick shift, now that's a very unique value-added prompt. There's not a lot of options. I mean, in terms of modern production car, basically none. In terms of more recent, past couple of decades, some of the most iconic ones would be the Acura NSX, the original good one from the 90s, 2000 era. I mean, one of the most infamous ones would be the Lamborghini LP640. Well, that's also a V12, it's glorious in and of itself. But again, rear engine, manual transmission. All those vehicles, I mean, Ferrari 360s, all those vehicles, again, with the engine in back, with the third pedal, are really premium. I mean, of course, you do have the Pontiac Fiero gathering dust in the corner, which is a cute, underrated car. Again, in terms of a car with that option, there is something unique and magical about that combination, and something really exotic. I really think GM should do this. They would basically print money at this point. Consumers would love it. But again, I don't think GM will. I think they should, but let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the cultural part of the podcast, Ben Shapiro is getting ratioed hard as he critiques Tucker Carlson for interviewing Nick Fuentes. Now, this brought to us thanks to, Ben Shapiro himself on his X profile, #Ben Shapiro, and he says, quote, "No to the groypers, no to cowards like Tucker Carlson who normalize their trash, no to those who champion them, no to demoralization, no to bigotry and anti-meteocratic horseshit, no to anti-Americanism, no." And about 41 minutes long, so we're not going to watch the whole thing. Obviously, we're going to watch maybe the first couple of minutes. Again, it's pretty violent. Got 32.1 million views, but only 51,000 likes, which is a pretty rough ratio. I mean, shoot, even some of my videos get better ratios than that. No, it's not saying much. I mean, I think I got three views on one video last week, but 2 upvotes. I mean, statistically speaking, that is very impressive in one metric. But without too much further ado, this is Ben Shapiro, and this is a first as well. Apparently, he's so irate, so invigorated, so upset that Ben Shapiro went through a whole episode without doing a single ad read, which I think I followed him on and off for almost a decade. That's unheard of. I don't think he's ever done that. You have to come on, guys. This episode is sponsored by Bert's Gold. You can't trust the government because the Federal Reserve, which, that is true, but there's always some type of pitch out there. It's brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go to vpn.com, get Express. Buy the Ben Shapiro package. They won't be able to see what you're looking at. You get the picture, but without too much further ado.
Hey, folks, I want to do something different on today's show. We're going to cover one topic in depth. That topic is, I think, the most important thing happening in the country. It was a hot topic last week, but I wanted to take some time to really gather my thoughts and speak on it in coherent fashion, holistic fashion. That topic is the fragmentation of the political right. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They call themselves the Groypers.
Oh, he said the name, which, again, for years, he would never actually say the name on his show.
They are white supremacists. They hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds, blacks, America's foreign policy, and America's Constitution. They admire Hitler and Stalin. And that splinter faction is now being facilitated and normalized within the mainstream Republican Party. The main agent in that normalization is Tucker Carlson, who is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, and a terrible friend.
Everyone who disagrees with me is a terrible friend. Help reminisce and remember when he threw Candace Owens under the bus. Which again, there's something. You're in terms of keeping your friends accountable and letting them know hey, I think you're down the wrong path. I don't agree with you. Again, at a party, Ben Shapiro got on a table. So he was about average size. I'm kidding. His height is normal. But again, in front of a whole party, he gave a whole speech bombastically making fun of her, telling her she was evil. All her opinions were terrible. at a party. When again, he's a co-founder of the Daily Wire. He'll say technically, she's not. He doesn't. She doesn't report to him at the time. He was just a creator. He's no longer a CEO. But again, he's one of the largest shareholders in the company. There are multiple investors. But again, he talks shit about someone who's a colleague at a party. When again, I would argue a leader and a friend are at a party, and someone asks, "What do you think about your employee or your colleague?" What they're saying. I would argue a mature adult would say, "You know what? I don't agree with what she's saying, but I appreciate her perspective. I don't agree with what she's, that's not the way I jive. I don't know what euphemism Ben would, that's not kosher. I think that would be a more apt metaphor for Ben Shapiro. I mean, you just say, I don't agree with that employee. But again, we're the Daily Wire. We love free speech. We believe everyone's opinion is important, and we want debates to have the best ideas brewed to the surface, which I thought was what Ben Shapiro stood for years. But no, he threw her under the bus, which again, I don't agree with a lot of what Candace says. I think she does some good investigative reporting for sure. Again, he just threw what I thought was his friend under the bus unceremoniously. When again, if you ever have an issue with a colleague or employee, you take that behind closed doors. Now, maybe again, and again, Candace has hinted that they never had those types of conversations behind closed doors. But again, it's a time and place, and there's not really an upside of doing that to a coworker or someone you like. All you had to do was say, no, I don't agree with what they're doing. I think that's more classy, but that's just me. But again, back to Ben Shapiro.
And Tucker Carlson last week was aided, abetted, celebrated for normalizing Nazism within the Republican Party by the mainstay organization of the traditional right, the Heritage Foundation. Now, before we explain what's been happening, let's make one thing clear. This is not about free speech or cancellation. It was never about free speech or cancellation. Free speech has a definition, the right to speak free of governmental coercion. I believe in it, of course. I've always defended it. Criticism of bad speech is, in fact, just a form of free speech. Cancellation also has a definition, the banning of particular people, including people like Nick Fuentes, from platforms like X or Facebook.
But they have a certain what they call Overton window at the Daily Wire, which is why they push Candace Owens out. They're free speech, but Overton window.
Facebook. I believe that Nick Fuentes is odious and despicable, but I've never called for his cancellation. And in fact, I've called for his restoration to those services, despite the fact that I think he's odious and despicable. It is not.
I'll admit, I would hate to go against Ben Shapiro and playing Scrabble. He would kick my ass. I mean, he uses some really good words, like antithetical. There are some really good words he uses. I'm not going to lie. He is probably a Scrabble champion, I would suppose.
Not cancellation to draw moral lines between viewpoints. In fact, we used to call that one of the key aspects of conservatism. It is not cancellation to refuse to signal boost Hitler's supporters like Nick Fuentes. It is not cancellation to criticize Tucker Carlson for rhetorically fluffing Nick Fuentes and other anti-American crackpots. It's not cancellation if you urge others to stop promoting those who rhetorically fluff Nazi apologists. Those are all elements of free speech.
And yet, again, it's according to Nick Fuentes, he didn't actually, in an interview with Tucker Carlson, he didn't actually show like screenshots or text message correspondence. Again, allegedly, the Daily Wire was one of the first entities to ensure Nick Fuentes was completely blacklisted and fired from most of his opportunities. They actually, again, Ben Shapiro has bombastically been against things like Media Matters. They're basically a hit group. Apparently, one of the Daily Wire cronies went to Media Matters with some Nick Fuentes content and said, hey, run with this. Game canceled. So you going to bring that up?
And anyone who says differently is lying to you, and lying for the most cynical reasons to misdirect from their own defense of those Nazi apologists and their promoters. The issue here isn't that Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show last week. He has every right to do that, of course. The issue here is that Tucker Carlson decided to normalize and fluff Nick Fuentes, and that the Heritage Foundation then...
There's a normalizing him. And again, I think a lot of what Nick Fuentes says, I vehemently disagree with. However, a lot of the other channels have already done that. He has been on, famously, Nick Fuentes was on Dave Smith. He also went, I think that was one of the biggest podcasts that really put him to the mainstream. They actually also had Patrick Bet David. It was kind of like a ripple effect or a domino effect. Tucker Carlson, yes, is one of the largest, most influential reporters and interviewers on the planet. But again, with the trajectory Nick Fuentes is at, I would not be surprised if he's on Joe Rogan in 3 to 6 months. Again, he is going on most of these largest podcasts out there. Another one that was pretty good was the Hodge Twins interview. Obviously not as big as Tucker Carlson, but again, this it's almost like a ripple effect or a domino effect. Nick has been going on more and more of those shows.
Decided to robustly defend that performance. Those who criticize both Tucker and Heritage aren't canceling. They are quite properly drawing a moral line. So, for those who don't understand what's going on, let's begin with Nick Fuentes. Now, as I mentioned, last week, Tucker Carlson...
It's like 42 minutes. I'll just do 1 or 2 more minutes.
...had on Nick Fuentes. Fuentes is a 27-year-old man who's dubbed himself the leader of a movement called the Groypers. He has a large audience of alienated young white men in particular, and he's earned increased media attention over the course of the past few years, especially over the last year. Now, from Tucker Carlson's interview, you might have gathered that Fuentes has some borderline views on race, a peculiar obsession with what he calls organized Jewry, and a rather sad relationship with the female sex. But probably you came away thinking that, for the most part, Fuentes lives on the radical edge of normality. You think that if you watch the interview, because Tucker Carlson decided that it was important not only to host Fuentes, but to smooth over his views, water them down, and make them far more palatable to a normal audience. As we'll discuss in a bit, this is what Tucker Carlson does for a living. But back to Nick Fuentes. To understand just what Tucker did here, we must actually examine what Nick Fuentes says on his show, and has said for almost a decade, because he was asked precisely 0 questions about any of what you're about to see by Tucker Carlson. Nick Fuentes says women want to be raped.
A lot of women want to be raped. And when I say raped, I mean like, that sounds bad when I say it like that. But there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the shit out of them. But also they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't.
Nick Fuentes says that his followers should kill, rape, and die in his name.
Raise
with the first one, yeah, Nick Fuentes has a lot of disgusting jokes. He also brings about one of those common female fantasies, which is being taken advantage of. Which, again, in 2025, make sure you have 58 pages of written consent before you try any of that. Doing any of that stuff outside marriage is high risk, in my opinion. But yeah, that is one of the most common fantasies that ladies have. Man, again, he's making a joke about that. But it gets worse.
your right hand. All right, everybody raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I will kill, rape, and die for Nicholas J. Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes says that women are whores who shouldn't be in politics.
I will continue my crusade against women in politics. It's always like this, and it's so ironic. Women are like, I don't like, when you say, you have to affect the face. When you say to repeal the 19th Amendment, that offends me. That hurts my feelings. It's like, have you ever stopped and considered that maybe if you get offended, there's such a strong emotional reaction to political opinions you disagree with across the board? Maybe that's one of the reasons why you shouldn't be making political decisions. I'm not attacking women. I'm attacking whores. You have no problems, right? I'm attacking whores. I'm attacking sluts. Stupid, dirty bitches.
Nick Fuentes says that Jim Crow was actually better for black people.
It was better for them too, number one, but number two, who cares? Who cares? You know, enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, they had to drink out of a different water fountain. Big fucking deal. Oh no, they had to go to a different school. Their water fountain in that famous picture was worse. Who cares? Grow up, drink out of the fucking water fountain. It's water, it's the same. You know, and, you know.
And yep, he continues to say some of the worst jokes about and opinions of all time. And yet, interestingly enough, Ben Shapiro taking the worst clips of Nick Fuentes, of which there are many, of course, Ben Shapiro got ratioed hard. Worse, I would argue, than some of my posts in social media instances, which is saying something. And again, Ben went viral, got 32.1 million views and 51,000 likes, which again is not a good ratio. Now, in the top comments, and again, I'm reading them in order. I was going to read them in order of who I follow, as well as the number of likes. One of the first ones comes to us thanks to Retard Finder, who says, quote, "You sound like a left-wing lunatic. The right is now indistinguishable from the left," getting 8.6 thousand likes. The Hodge twins said, quote, you were never Trump and told people to get the COVID shot. You aren't MAGA, get effed," getting 20,000 likes. Owen Schroyer, famous individual reporter, used to be with Alex Jones. He spun off his own channel. He says, quote, You're the original Never Trumper. And it's the article from March 4th, 2016 on dailywire.com. An opinion piece by Ben Shapiro says, quote, I would never vote for Donald Trump. Here's why, okay? ExpressVPN. Amelia Henderson says, quote, find middle path. There's a school bus that is labeled the pro-Israel right. And they have a tank pushing out of the way. No, it's the original killdozer. So it's labeled Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, and Candace. You 908 likes. Candace Owens says, quote, I feel on an editorial point it was completely unnecessary to include me in this anti-Tucker rant. Alas, I shall have to respond, getting 25,000 likes. We also have David Santa Clara says, quote, I'm not giving up Tucker memes for you and Mark Levin. Tucker's awesome. And there's a screenshot from Tucker Carlson when he was on Fox News. It says, levels of back never dreamed possible. It says, we're so back. It's Tucker Carlson, Mr. Santa hat. Let's see here. Finally, a contrarian statement brewing to the surface, coming to us thanks to Sagisi Eternia, says, quote, Ben Shapiro is drawing the line. The conservative movement is about American merit and victory, not the failed, resentful ideologies of the 20th century dressed up in new clothes. This groyper trash is just leftism for losers, and they feed on demoralization. Anyone who codifies them or normalizes their anti-American poison is a strategic liability. We will win by being better, stronger, and smarter. No compromise. Getting 726 likes. Was she ratioed, though? Let's see. Thomas Ellis, no, not ratioed, but the first response is from Thomas Ellis saying, quote, you mean Ben Shapiro, who proclaimed his loyalty to Israel, getting 6 likes. Going back to the main comment section, Laura Wikinski says, quote, reminder, we would all be dead or have turbo cancer if we listened to Ben Shapiro, aka my wife's a Dr. Shapiro, which that is one of his 5 top catchphrases. Okay, guys, my wife is a doctor, okay? Which she famously is, in fact, a doctor. This is a tweet from Ben Shapiro in 2020, and he says, quote, in other words, get the vaccine, dope's getting 10,000 likes. Let's see. Meta Maven says, some of them really believe we just woke up one day and decided to not like Jews, like they had nothing to do with it at all. I just decided to take an extremely dangerous stand against them because I'm mean. It can possibly be their constant and relentless subversion and promotion of degeneracy. Couldn't be their assault on Christianity and family. Couldn't be because they support endless immigrants. And here's the ethno state. I just decided one day it would be fun to make my life harder by noticing them. Getting 600 likes. A-Tunes got 44,000 likes for this. And he says, quote, debate Nick Fuentes and destroy him with your facts and logic then. Show the world you can beat him instead of avoiding him like you have for the past decade. Getting 44,000 likes, which, yeah. Again, Ben Shapiro allegedly saw Nick Fuentes when he was in college at a very famous debate, and they were grooming him, to be a major personality until they realized he wasn't very pro-Israel, in which that case, not only did they blacklist him, they threw mud against him and got him canceled. And again, Ben Shapiro famously debates people. That is his thing. If you were to have Nick Fuentes versus Ben Shapiro, that on a debate ticket, you'd have record ratings. Or as Trump would say, Ben Shapiro and Nick Fuentes should debate mano a mano. We'll get the great auditorium, maybe hook it up in Rome, the Coliseum. It'd be great. Is a youth debate, so it'll be epic. Who will get ratioed? Who will be trolled? Who will have the facts, the logic, and the reason? In the corner, you have Ben Shapiro, 98 pounds, 5'3". No, I'm kidding. He's normal height and weight. Not to brag, but I could probably bench press him. Not so much, but yeah, it's an instance where that would be a huge debate. Everyone would tune in. And again, Ben Shapiro for decades Ben Shapiro is one of the best speakers. He is extremely articulate, and he has some good ideas. He is extremely articulate. He is an excellent debater. But again, he's been avoiding specifically Nick Fuentes for, again, about a decade. Why doesn't he have him on the show, or why does he debate him? Again, Ben Shapiro is like a human encyclopedia, or encyclopedia if you want to sound fancy and mispronounce it. He's got the facts, the logic, and the reason for most things. Why won't he debate him? Ben says it would mainstream Nick Fuentes. In terms of the cultural, pivot or mainstream of a personality, Nick Fuentes is already there. He has become such a normal term in casual conversation. Even, who was it? One of my aunts asked about him. He's not even on social media. He's becoming that popular in terms of knowledge. I'm not sure I don't think a mass movement of people necessarily agree with everything Nick Fuentes is saying. But again, in terms of becoming mainstream, it's already up. He was the number one show on Spotify before Spotify took him down. being flat platform on pretty much every major every possible venue, it's impressive the amount of growth trajectory Nick Fuentes has had. You also have a Pat II saying, quote, "I don't give a damn what you think." And it's a quote from Ben Shapiro in 2017. It says, quote, "And by the way, I don't give a damn about the so-called browning of America. Color doesn't matter. Ideology does." Ben got 1,000 likes. He's got 2.3 thousand likes, which, yeah, in terms of Ben's take on that specific topic, I do think ideology and sharing of values is the most important thing. You also have Kangman Lee saying, quote, "Why don't you debate Tucker or Nick? You debated and wanted to debate the worst of the leftists who want to transition kids and kill babies. If you're able to do a full-length episode on Tucker Carlson and Nick, surely you can debate their ideas," getting 9.2 thousand likes. Someone says, by the name of Oreo, has a picture of Jesus simply saying King, getting 404 likes. You also have a tweet from Pope Groiper, and I believe he actually is retweeting for Nick Fuentes, and he says, quote, "No world Jewry, no to the browning of America, no to mocking Christendom, no to Zionist-controlled conservatives, no to warmongers who send our sons to die for Tel Aviv, no to the ADL and SPLC thought police, no to the controlling opposition grift, no to financiers of demographic replacement, no to treason cloaked in patriotism, yes to remnant, yes to our people, yes to Christ is King." Getting 6.2 thousand likes. And there's a little caricature of Ben Shapiro and APAC. Crusader says, "We're flipping the tables. You can't stop us." Getting 882 likes. As well as a famous reference to when Jesus did that in the actual church, where he found the churches were making money. He actually literally flipped over the merchant tables. Everyone thinks Jesus was so peaceful. He was, well, obviously, I think there's the OG-based individual. Yeah, he had some violent tendencies. Lucky Teeter says, "Okay," is a screenshot of Ben Shapiro from 9 years ago saying, Ben Shapiro, Donald Trump is a liar, getting 2,000 likes. You have Evan simply has a laughing picture compilation Tucker Carlson getting 2.8 thousand likes. A-Tunes also says, quote, "Instead of cherry picking a few jokes and hyperboles from 8 years of daily live streams, why don't you explain your actual evil beliefs?" And there's a screenshot from Ben Shapiro in 2005 saying, "Why the war in Iraq is right for America." Got 14,000 likes, which, again, I think Nick Fuentes says he live streams like 2 to 3 hours per day, which, yeah, I mean, I do it like, I mean, live stream, I probably should. Like, yeah, if you're on camera for such a vast volume of time, you're inevitably going to have some bad takes and some bad jokes. Some more than others, of course. Or in my case, awkward stuttering. A-Tunes also says, "Funny how you can't ignore Nick anymore. He's more relevant than you. You get lost, Ben. Get ready." There's a picture of a bunch of frogs getting 26,000 likes, which, yeah, another thing about the popularity and cultural significance of Ben Shapiro, one of the first people to really call him out in terms of what I believe is a discrepancy between perceived popularity and actual popularity was Steven Crowder a couple of years ago, when he noted, yeah, Ben Shapiro seems to get a lot of views on the YouTube. However, how many comments is he getting? Because again, on the YouTube and other social media platforms, it's very easy to buy views, like literally, and skew the results. You just have a bunch of fake views. Actual comments are much harder to actually duplicate, much harder to influence in terms of fudging the numbers. And I can't but notice Ben Shapiro, he would consistently get a lot of views. But in terms of comments, there really wasn't that many comments relative to the view count. Now you also have, let's see here. Drogo says, "You are a foreign loyalty." As a tweet from Ben Shapiro saying, "I would gladly waive the born in the USA requirement for President Bibi," getting 620 likes. And Carol also says, quote, "Hey, do you remember the time when you told everyone to take the vaccine, Ben?" Getting 45,000 likes. Let's see. Harrison Smith says, "Every clip you played is better and more honest than anything you say. Why do you think this is such a good idea?" Getting 13,000 likes. Let's see. America has a picture of some rhinos having adult time. One rhino topping the other rhino. It has Islam logo on it, Muslim logo, whatever. And then you have the cameraman looking away at the little Jewish logo, and the cameraman is labeled Groipers and Tucker / Turning Point USA, getting 1.5 thousand likes. So a couple contrarian statements are brewing to the surface. Let's see. Van Eyck says, "We just want for America what Ben Shapiro wants for Israel." It's a Ben Shapiro article from 2003. I can't see the particular date, but it's when Ben Shapiro says transfer is not a dirty word, where he basically just says genocide is okay in terms of moving people around, which again, he's redacted years later. That got 279 likes. Big Tom Callahan from Callahan Auto. great movie. Tommy Boy. He says, quote, stop trying to divide it. Can't speak today. Again, when I first started the show, I spoke faster than Ben Shapiro and more awkwardly than Joe Biden trying to climb upstairs. And I had no subscribers. Well, maybe my parents. But as I slowly but surely gain more subscribers, I've been slightly better at speaking, which leads to my theory. The more people that click that button, the better I'll get at speaking, and someday make it through an entire episode speaking perfectly and articulately. So if you can go ahead and click that button and tell your friends, I would greatly appreciate it. And also, tell your enemies. Your enemies might be so enamored and impressed by your choice of podcast material, they then become your friends. Or they find me so visually and visceral disgusting that they then become greater enemies and it becomes a physical altercation. So maybe I shouldn't recommend it. Either way, make for a funny story. So tell your friends and tell your enemies. We also have Envision says, imagine this, as a quote from Ben Shapiro. He says, quote, spent the day watching my fully vaccinated 13-month-old cough until blue with a persistence because others didn't get vaccinated. Thanks, Dolts, getting 429 likes. Critical based theorist has a picture. Oh, it's a famous movie, Falling Down. And in the movie, the Nazi is labeled Groypers, and it says, we're the same, you and I. And is it a Michael Douglas, the main character, who is labeled MAGA, says, we are not the same. I'm American, and you're a sick asshole. Getting 1.1 thousand likes. Let's see. Taylor Hansen also says, trying to force people against Tucker Carlson is not going to go how you think it will. Getting 699 likes. Yeah, holy crap. Shirt Wash Cash says, America First, bitch. And say, I don't know if it's real, but it's a picture of Tucker Carlson flipping off the camera. It got 28,000 likes. Maghat says, Tucker had a good conversation with Nick Fuentes where he gently pushed back on his perceived anti-Semitism. You aren't going to win people over by attacking them and name-calling. It's more effective to have constructive conversation like Tucker did. 828 likes, which, yep. And again, it's one of those things, there's like the Streisand effect. The more they try to suppress Nick Fuentes, the more popular it's become. We're now, again, stratospherically shooting through the moon in terms of popularity and followers, which is, again, is insane. The level of virality and the level of awareness that more people are hearing about Nick. And again, he's banned on every major social media platform. You can't post his show on YouTube, which is the largest place where people go to view content. Yeah, up until recently, he's also banned on Twitter, or now X. I think Rumble is now the only one that he's consistently on. I mean, his followers were so passionate back in the day, they would follow him on a news site that he didn't make up. I believe he actually hosted on his own. I mean, that's how long and how passionate his followers are. And again, if Ben Shapiro really in terms of the ratings would be phenomenal if he would actually have Ben Shapiro versus a Nick Fuentes debate. And it's gotten to the point where he's become so mainstream. If you really want to stop Nick Fuentes' ideology and combat his, really go toe-to-toe with him, I think a debate would be the best platform. But the real question is, will Ben Shapiro do it? I don't think he will. I think he should. Because again, that's what Ben Shapiro, that was the whole premise of people who are conservatism around the right is, we want to have open conversations and have the debates. Let the best ideas brew to the surface. And yet more and more we're seeing people, we need to cancel Tucker Carlson for having an interview. We need to blacklist him. We need to get rid of him. Call his sponsors. Get his sponsors pulled. Which again, that's what the left is. And again, Ben Shapiro is not the only one going after Tucker Carlson. You also have Mark Levin. You have a lot of mainstream conservatives that are now going after Tucker Carlson. Personally, I think you should be able to interview. I think more interviews the better. More conversations the better. The more debates the better. Let the ideas brew the surface. Again, Nick Fuentes says some disgusting, terrible things that I don't agree with. Again, he's an American. You should be able to have, every American has the right to freedom of speech. Yet, Nick Fuentes recently called out other people, like Dave Rubin. A lot of these folks never said, when these being blacklisted, they should stick up for him. They should actually say, hey, he deserves free speech. But let me know your thoughts in the comments because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting cultural news, you have leftists saying that fatness is based on privilege. Now, I should give you a visual disclaimer here, because these gals are debatably more visceral disgusting than myself, which is saying something. But thanks to Lives of TikTok, and oh dear God. Now, Lives of TikTok says, quote, liberals now have a privilege scale to calculate your privilege based on how fat you are. The fatter someone is, the more oppressed they are. Which, kind of cliche to say, but every time, we talk about fatness in America, the most obese, or as Trump would say, America's most obese, fattest country on the planet. RFK Jr., what are you doing? Get those capitals out. Get the good french fries back at the fast food. Make America healthy again. Maha. Now, again, when it comes to people who are overweight, there are some serious health conditions. I always want to preface this, where it's very difficult for them to lose weight, and they actually gain weight because of medical conditions. either side effects from medication or there are certain diseases or certain things where no fault of their own, people can be overweight. I'll fully acknowledge that does happen. I know a couple people who have those type of medical instances. However, a vast overwhelming of Americans are overweight and morbidly obese because of health choices, aka what they're eating, and lack of activity, aka no exercise. That is a vast overwhelming of Americans, and it is disgusting. And again, it's the number one thing that people die from are all preventable diseases that correlate with obesity. It's ridiculous. We need to make America healthy again. And of course, they're just saying they're oppressed. And I was going to say, insult to injury. Not only is she morbidly obese, which again, look at obesity rates, women more than men, especially liberal ones. Her sweatshirt, I think she stole it from Bill Cosby, which, I guess maybe he had a fire sale when he went to jail. But yeah, she's got a Bill Cosby looking sweater on. And of course, in true liberal leftist fashion, she has glasses thicker than most guys' thighs and looking dorky as usual, which blows my mind. There's like 10,000 different eyeglass designs out there, albeit made by like 3 companies. There's so many options. They always choose the dorkiest ones. There are some good glasses out there, but they never buy them. But let's wait. Maybe they'll have some logic and reason. Obviously they won't, but let's hear what they have to say.
I have a question. Can you tell me what category of fat I fit in?
So it's based on your shirt size. So if you are a 1 or 2X, you are small fat. 3 to 4X, you are mid fat. 5 to 6X, you are super fat. Is based on.
Also, septum theory proves true. She, of course, has the cow ring, which only 1 or 2 guys out of the 4 billion find attractive.
What level of privilege you have in the world. So someone in a small fat category may not struggle getting on an airplane, but someone in a mid fat or super fat may not be able to use even the airplane extender. So that's where that comes in, and like the privilege levels of like what fat means to different people.
God, that's so stupid. Also, one of those, in terms of how sad and pathetic America has become, there have been flights that have been delayed because a single seatbelt extender wasn't enough. They need multiple ones. And again, there's some people who have some detrimental health conditions and some side effects. Understand. But again, I would argue 98 to 99.9% of the time, it's because of health choices. Another thing, a little pet peeve of mine is people always say, oh, if you're poor, you have to eat fast food. You can't afford, to eat healthy things. Which, perhaps, I'm just so annoyed because in my lifetime, I have lived below the poverty line. And guess what? You buy bulk crap or bulk good food from the Walmart, and you can make it work. Back in the day, a 2-pound bag of carrots was under $2. And again, you may argue a little racist. I am Hispanic. The beans and rice are underrated. They're pretty good. Mostly the beans. Rice is just kind of filler carbs. But it's an instance where beans are pretty darn cheap, especially if you get the Walmart Great Value brand. And again, you get some cheap. Again, you're not going to be able to go to Whole Foods and get the nice organic stuff. I would argue Whole Foods is fancy and overrated anyway, but again, that's the number one objection I hear when people say, oh yeah, you can't afford to eat healthy. I would argue you absolutely can. It's cheaper, especially fast food nowadays. I think a bill from McDonald's is like $25. It's ridiculous. It's comical. It's disgusting. Also, when you look at what's inside the foods. So yeah, it's anything but accepting responsibility. And this got about 250,000 views and 3.8 thousand likes. One of the first comments comes to us thanks to Amelia Henderson, who says, quote, no matter how mentally ill the left is, it's always worse, getting 139 likes. Yep. Libercat Media Tam says, quote, LMFAO, they want to be oppressed so badly, getting 25 likes. Arthur Eagleman says, quote, he really looks oppressed, getting 155 likes. Paul Zupa says it's just sad, getting 31 likes. The conservative alternative says, quote, these people eat 3 boxes of fudge rounds, then pretend they're oppressed because of the weight they gain. Honestly, you did this to yourself, getting 28 likes, which, yeah, for the most part, in most cases, yeah, they do it to themselves. Dr. Ashley says, quote, someone needs to build a fat camp. Here's a famous meme that's been going around for, I would say, almost a year now. And you have a crane, and the crane is labeled crane to lower the fatties in. And it looks like a pentagon in terms of the fence perimeter. And it's called a fat camp. And inside the fat camp are stairmasters, a pool for drinking water. And on one end of the fat camp, the fence, instead of, the fence being solid wall, on one side, it's actually a fence with pillars. And it says a wall with human-sized openings. So again, they lose the weight and they'll be able to walk out. They got 173 likes, which Stairmaster is a great way to lose weight. Those are, I used to do, 5 miles when I was in college on Stairmaster and run 3 times a week. It is intense. You will lose a lot of weight. Also, lifting weights is an exceptional way to lose weight as well. You also have Cody says, replace EBT and SNAP with MREs and watch everyone get jobs, getting 52 likes. Yeah. Great Uncle Romulus? I almost read that as Ruckus. Uncle Rook is no relation. Now, anyway, he says, quote, that checks out. No flaws in that logic at all. As a fat-looking gal labeled Snap with a tattoo, getting 45 likes. Hagelin Ultra MAGA has a picture of a fat gal that says, y'all MacGuffins better quit oppressing me. Getting 15 likes. Libby369 says liberalism is a mental disease. Has a crazy-looking leftist, getting 11 likes. Tired of All says, I'm tired of the oppression Olympics. And it's a meme. It says, some days you feel like you're surrounded by effing idiots. Other days you realize it's not just some days. Getting 111 likes. Robin P. has a quote from Thomas Sowell. Says, quote, what exactly is your fair share of someone else has worked for? Getting 37 likes. A lot of people posting that meme of the fat camp. MAGA Anonymous has a AI generated picture of a very obese girl with, of course, neon colored hair. And she has a sign that says, I don't hate Trump supporters. Getting 7 likes, which, another reason men and women are not getting married these days. Dramatically different cultural and political ideologies. Also, let's see. Playboy has a picture of a tired looking Statue of Liberty, says, F and I'm moving to Florida, getting 28 likes. Oh, yeah, it's this is one we'll start. This is funny. And Don't Call Me Shirley says, quote, Olivia Juliana confirmed as queen of the oppressed. Getting 9 likes, which, that's an interesting move, Democrats. They hired a morbidly obese white gal, leftist, of course, who's very much pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQ, very much pro-leftist ideologies. They said, we're going to hire her to win the male vote, which, again, on average, guys aren't really into those things. Also, there's a visual appeal. Yeah, she's very much obese and not attractive. Again, I don't have much ground to stand on. Look at me. At least I work out every day. Let's see here. One more. Emotional Fatigue has the cartoon of a liberal white woman with, of course, the cow ring. And there's actually a leash attached to the cow ring. And leash is labeled, the hand is labeled as Democrat Party, getting 19 likes, which is overwhelmingly who they support. And again, just like improving your life and feeling better, diet and exercise is one of the best things you can do. I mean, I always joke, partially joke, I think kind of serious though, when I say it's impossible to be depressed during doing a bench press. You gotta lift it up. So, again, I hope we do have a huge cultural movement to get actually healthy again. All this thing about accepting you as who you are when you're clearly not healthy is not, I think you're actually doing a disservice to those people when you lie to them, but let me know your thoughts, because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Zohran Mamdami won and repeal the 19th Amendment trending as women as well as immigrants overwhelmingly voted for him. Now, this is brought to us thanks to, a couple of profiles on the X, or I think 5 people still call it Twitter, maybe. One of the first ones comes to us thanks to Dr. Malouf. It says, quote, how the hell does the city that experienced the biggest Islamic terrorist attack in history vote for a Muslim mayor? It got 12 million views and 189,000 likes. And he says and clarifies this, quote, it turns out that Zohran Mamdami voters have lived in New York for less than 5 to 10 years. People born in New York City overwhelmingly rejected him. They remember. And here you have a breakdown of, what were the candidates, Mamdami, Cuomo, Silva, Adams, other. And they have the question of, how long do you live in New York City? And in terms of voting for Zohran Mamdami, people who lived there less than 5 years, that was, 83% of them voted for him. Again, that was also 5% of the sample size. Again, now 5 to 10 years, 76% voted for Zohran, 8% of the sample size. 10 years, but not born here, and is at 35% of the sample size, but 54% voted for Zohran. Then people who are born in New York City, 34% voted for Zohran, 45% voted for Cuomo, 17% for Silva. Adams was so small we didn't recognize it. Looks like independents or others actually got more than Adams in that there. And again, that went pretty viral. That other infographic got 544,000 views and 7.8 thousand likes, which, let me make those a little bit bigger on the screen there. Which, there's definitely been some changes, like importing more and more folks of that ideology in the United States lately, especially places like Dearborn, Michigan, and New York City, which I purposely mispronounced as a pejorative slight to that terrible place. But again, 83% of them, but again, that's also 6% of the sample size. So again, it's not a majority, but of that sample, yes. And one of the first comments comes to us thanks to T Slice, who says, quote, the less than 5 years group is very likely also less than 5 years in the USA, which makes them non-citizens, getting 327 likes. Bulba says it's almost like they actually are importing voters, getting 186 likes, which, yeah, that's another funny thing about politics and leftism. Every time they say this isn't happening, yeah, it turns out it is. Actually, pretty much everything in terms of their ideologies and their actions pretty much is the same pattern, pretty boring because it repeats itself so often. First they say, this is not happening. Then they say, well, it's happening, but it's a good thing. You should tolerate it. Then they say, oh, it's happening and you should accept it. Then they say it's happening, you should celebrate it. This is pretty much every ideology group that they've rolled out past couple decades. You also have Yorza Dawarla saying, oh, but this. Again, 18 likes, what is it? As a random meme, I guess. You also have Private Law Society says, quote, remember that elections are in reality selections. The votes are just there to legitimize the result. They don't actually have anything to do with say. As a meme, it says, it's not the people who count the vote, it's the people it's not the people who vote that count, it's people who count the votes, which is a very cumbersome reorientation or rewording of a more famous quote, which people thought was Joseph Stalin. I looked into that a little while back in terms of trying to fact check it. Apparently, Joseph Stalin never said this precisely. It's been attributed to a couple of people historically throughout the years, but let me know in the comments. I have not found the origin, but there's a very, very famous quote in which someone famously said, and let's see, oh, geez Louise. He says, show me the man. Oh, it's one of those days, or definitely need more coffees to say. Well, no, I usually do 2 pots a day on average. But oh yeah, I remember now. Again, you have to click the subscribe button to help with my ineptitudes, of which there are many. But also, a very famous individual once said, he who casts the ballot means nothing. He who counts the ballot means everything. It took me a minute there, but there's a very prolific, very famous quote that many people attribute to Joseph Stalin. I've never found the exact vernacular accredited to the individual who said that. You also have, let's see here. Rainey on a Monday says, this is how. The Daily Romanian ex-KGB agent explains how to destroy society without firing a single bullet. Yuri Bezmenov in 1983, which, yep. So we might review that another day because, yeah. Yuri Bezmenov, he basically showed exactly how the United States would be destroyed, and we are being destroyed. It's horrifying how accurate his plan is. Worked far more effective than, again, firing any single bullet. Big Dog says, then why don't they reject Trump? He's best friends with Saudis who's carried out the attacks. Make sure it makes sense. Get 13 likes. Jeff says, actually, the majority of them, 54%, have lived there in 10 plus years. Numbers are hard, I know. Gained 1.1 thousand likes. David Garcia says, quote, Mamdami isn't an accident. He's the predictable outcome of open border policy who saturated a region with newcomers who lack deep roots in its history, then appeal to their self-preservation instincts rather than shared patriotism or historical awareness. The result, the natives' population's voice is diluted, while promises of benefits secure the loyalty from the freshly imported electorate. Getting 62 likes, which, 63. There you go. 64 going up like a stock. Let's see here. You also had an infographic from Tana saying how more women voted for Zohran than men. Let's see here. It actually brings me to the other comment here. This is quoted thanks to Rachel Jan Faza. Hashtag Rachel JANFAZA. Now he says, quote, young women are history of tonight. 81% voted for Mamdami in New York City, 80% for Cheryl in New Jersey, 78% for Springer in Virginia, per NBC's exit polls. And she got 6.5 million views as well as 48,000 likes. She also says, quote, Democrats do seem to do better with them. Sorry, she says, quote, Democrats do seem to do better with young men, but gender gap is still pronounced. Young men were 64% for Mamdami, 56% for Springer, 54% for Cheryl in New Jersey, per NBC's exit polls. That got 1.9 thousand likes. And one of the first comments comes to us thanks to Matt Van Swol, who says, quote, this is the most important, most dire, most dangerous thing in the country right now. To ignore this, is to ignore the future election outcomes. Suicidal empathy of young women whose emotions are preyed upon by the Democrat Party is what caused this. Open your eyes. Getting 10,000 likes, which, yes. When you look at the correlation of also who is on the most amount of pharmaceutical drugs, who has the highest rates of, depression, as well as the highest rates of, mental health issues, liberal white women are a vast, overwhelming majority of them. Which, I don't know if I can't but think, probably not a coincidence with their voting patterns. Amelia Henderson also says, for what? And you have the Homer Simpson's joke where Homer's driving by a car and by Larry and Carl, and he says something, say, oh, I think he said he's gay. He says, vote for Zohran Mamdami. And Larry and Carl go, what do you say? He says something about being un-American, getting 114 likes. Let's see. Ray Schwartz says the biggest threats to Western civilization is a little bar graph. The smallest is Russia. Second smallest is China. Third, and then you get the biggest to Islam is the third or the second biggest, and the biggest is white liberal women with liberal arts degrees, getting 3.4 thousand likes, which, yeah, when you look at who gets the most useless college degrees, a lot of gals. I don't know a single guy who's dumb enough to get a gender studies degree. Again, I know some guys got stupid degrees, but nothing that moronic. I think I know one communications major, which again, most college degrees these days are utterly worthless. They're usually just debt traps, I would argue. Now you also have Victor Durham, the very famous quote from George Orwell. Again, one of those best authors in history. This one is from his work of art 1984, which, very sad book, though, again, it's even sadder when you think how the reality is worse than the books. If you have kids, Animal Farm is much more digestible from a reading perspective. It's a lot shorter, easier words, and it gets them to realize the importance of how evil big government is. Now, George Orwell, this quote, in which he says, quote, it's always the women and above all the young ones who are the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of the slogans, the amateur spies, getting 6.8 thousand likes and, yeah. Yep. Anti-communist has a quote from Dr. Cindy Watson. It says, quote, these kind of women will look you dead in the face and complain about women being unsafe in public, then vote for the guy that point blank wants to abolish prisons. LOL, getting 5,000 likes. Yep. Yeah, 5.1 thousand likes. That's going to be like a good stock. Yeah, it's kind of ironic. Yeah, it's ironic when you look at mass migration and who's voting for, well, not just that, but voting for, open borders, mass migration, and being soft on crime. Overwhelmingly, women are voting for those policies. Is voting for political candidates that are pushing those things, especially in the UK and Europe, weak conquered areas. Yeah, look at who's hurting the women the most. Statistically speaking, they're the mass migrants, who again are not getting security vetted like they used to back in the day. And again, they're voting for it in many cases. You also have a quote from Classic Liberty. It says, quote, women overwhelmingly vote for pro-migrant policies, and now men must risk their lives to fend off the world that leftist female votes created. Yep, in 306 likes. Simulation verse 2024 says, hard times create strong men create good times create liberal white women create bad times. In 3.9 thousand likes, which, yeah, fact check true. Let's see here. Agent Orange says, remember this face before you vote Democrats again. Yes, this is that was a Zarunska, the gal who was on public transport who was stabbed by the piece of shit who was out of jail. He was out of jail 14 times. Again, he was a Democrat-appointed judge. 14 times he's let out of jail. 14 times he's arrested and let him go. Then he killed her. That's those policies to get us. That got 315 likes. Milestone has a picture that says repeal the 19th, getting 787 likes. Jayhawk for Life says liberal white women, when they see a perfectly functioning society, it says, I'm going to wreck it. It's a picture of Wreck-It Ralph getting 1.2 thousand likes. You also have another quote from Dylan Turner, who's again reading the full quote from George Orwell. It says, quote, it was always the women and above all the young women who were the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of the slogans, the amateur spies, and the nosers of unorthodoxy. 196 likes. See, you got to click that subscribe button. Everyone is quoting George Orwell, which, again, he's based, obviously. R. Bob has a picture of a white gal holding a bow and arrow, backwards, while the other guy's pulling the arrow towards her. She's labeled liberal. The guy with the arrow is labeled Muslim, getting 287 likes. Phil Antropy says young women vote for FAFO. You have a white liberal gal with a t-shirt that says vote blue no matter who, which is a very mentally vacuous statement. And she says, defund the police, Black Lives Matter. Then you have a black guy in a hoodie come up to her and punch her in the face. 1.9 thousand likes. Let's see. You also have a quote from the New York Post that says, Zohran Mamdami said New York Police Department shouldn't respond to domestic violence calls in research podcast interview, which, yeah, he said they should have a counselors go out there. Got 919 likes. Ghost of the Machine posted that saying, I hope they get what they voted for. Yeah. As if you need yet another reason not to live in New York shitty. It's, again, I can't help but think there's going to be mass exodus of taxpayers, which, again, the only way to get all the free crap Zohran campaign on giving to the people is by increasing the tax. So, again, I can't help but think even more people are going to move out. But, Let me know your thoughts, because, as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Other interesting political news, you have Omar Fateh losing for mayoral candidate in Minneapolis. Now, this is brought to us thanks to End Wokeness. And here you can see, it says, quote, Jacob Frey beats Omar Fateh in Minneapolis. There's Omar, which is, I forget what you call that sash. And then, of course, the other guy has also a t-shirt that says, I love Somalia, which, I'm sorry, I thought this was America. Well, I'm only partially kidding. Minneapolis is basically Little Somalia, or Somalia 2.0. Minnesota, the state, has become so weak and conquered, they redesigned the state flag to look like a rudimentary design of Somalia. Because, of course.
Somalia hanulato! Somalia hanulato!
Somalia. Somalia. Hiran State. Mawisle.
But again, they're appealing to their voter base. That's who they imported into Minneapolis, especially. And it's got 2.1 million views, as well as 40,000 likes. Which, yeah, I was actually surprised Omar lost. Again, give it a couple years. The gifts that they have in Minneapolis, I suspect they'll probably win the next time. One of the first comments comes to us, thanks to Amelia Henderson. Says, quote, time to send them back. There's a AI generated picture says, is it too soon, or can we start talking about deporting Obama's Somalis? Getting 848 likes. The conservative alternative says, quote, I can't blame them. There's something off about this guy. There's some screenshots of Omar Fateh. It says, this man has an evil grin, which, yeah, he looks creepy. However, I don't have much ground to stand on. I'm a weird looking guy. The truth be told, I'm not very photogenic either. And if anyone's on camera, you're going to be able to get those awkward screenshots. Some people do have a disproportionate amount of time on film in which you can take awkward screenshots. Probably I do as well. I did get 215 likes, though. Libercat Media TM says, quote, the lesser of two evils. Remember, Ilhan Omar campaigned for and endorsed Omar Fateh, getting 944 likes. Paul Zupa says, either way, Minneapolis is in terrible hands, getting 554 likes. Thick Egged Shell says, quote, guess I'll need another ship to take hostage. There's a famous screenshot from the movie, is it Captain Phillips? We have the famous pirate who goes, I'm the captain now, which is a very violent moment. It's a low bar, but that might be my best impression all year. Again, low bar for my impressions. David Santa Clara says, quote, yep, no win situation. Without guys like Frey, Fateh wouldn't be here, and now he'll push to import more of them. That was once this great state, getting 471 likes. Let's see. You also have commentary. Donald says, well, there's always Somalian pirate ship openings, getting 433 likes. Jay Reynolds says, it's like rooting for hepatitis A over hepatitis B, getting 3.1 thousand likes. You have MK with a famous quote from Theodore Roosevelt, and he says, quote, or rather, this is his quote originally, Theodore Roosevelt's ideology on immigrants being imported in America in 1907. And he says, quote, in the first place, we should insist that if the immigrant comes here are in good faith, become an American and assimilate himself to us, he shall be treated on the exact equality with everyone else, for it is an outrage to discriminate any against such man because of creed, birthplace, or origin. But this is predicated upon the person becoming in every facet an American and nothing but an American. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he's American but something else also isn't an American at all. We have room for but one flag, the American flag. We have room for one language here and loyalty, and that is loyalty to the American people. In 2,000 likes, agreed. However, I was about to say half the political party or political United States disagrees with him now. It's probably more than that, because a lot of Republicans have dual citizenship. A lot of Democrats do as well. Yeah, how much our country has shifted. Again, here's my family, came here from Cuba. Spoiler alert, they don't speak, they speak English especially well. You might debate and say how good could they possibly speak with my speaking aptitudes. However, I'm actually the only one in the family that has stutters and is bad at public speaking, ironically enough. But again, they came to the United States. There's no Cuban flags in our house, or I live in my own now. But we have, I was about to say I have one flag. I'm from Texas. We got a Texas flag as well. But again, that's a very interesting juxtaposition in the changes we've seen culturally, politically, past, I'd say 20 years especially. Again, you have a lot of people come to the United States, and they'll keep having their original country's flag. Which again, if you love that country so much, you could go back there. They all come here, because America is a land of opportunity. And sometimes they even learn our language. Again, my family did back in the day. And truth be told, they speak English, I would argue, exceptionally well, of course. But yeah, in terms of assimilation and the ideology of the founding fathers, I would argue most people that come here now don't even know who the founding fathers were. Even sadder, a lot of Americans probably don't as well. I would argue thanks to the ineptitudes and or corruption of the, Department of Education, which, yeah, they've done a bang up job spending trillions of dollars for lower and lower test scores. Again, I think we need to really have an overhaul, ensure that everyone in the United States actually knows knows about the founding fathers, the ideologies, what made America great to begin with. Because I don't think people on the left or people on the right, especially people on the left, know enough about that. You also have No Quarter Memes says, how can we make this happen? It's a picture of Omar Fateh, as well as, I was going to say, yeah, I try to keep the jokes moderately PG-13, but you have Representative Ilhan Omar, and simply says deport gained 2.6 thousand likes. Yeah, The Immortal says far-right extremism and says debate college students, preaches the gospel, starts a beautiful family, wants open dialogue. It says far-left extremism, you have a guy dressed as a woman, says will murder you for publicly speaking, hates godlessness and spreads satanism. Hates godliness, hates their parents, wants to silence oppression, gained 983 likes. Fatishi has a picture and says, the Gulf Wars, we're fighting them over there, so we'll never have to fight them here. The guy opens his eyes. He says, oh, yeah, Omar and Zohran are here, getting 564 likes. Here he says, both were bad choices. You see, he actually cried and knelt down to the casket of George Floyd, getting 607 likes all those years ago. He was a lifetime criminal, died from drug overdose. And again, it's one of those things where a lot of people said, George Floyd robbed a pregnant woman at gunpoint. She actually was not pregnant at the time. Her daughter apparently was live and in that room with them, which I would argue is even more horrifying because the child could have, I can't imagine the kind of trauma that would entice when you're robbing a woman, you have a kid in the room too. So you debatably, I would argue that's even worse. You also have God and Country says, no one has done more harm to Americans than Democrats, getting 446 likes. Sarah Smith says, Minneapolis is still screwed. And it's a article from March 21st, 2025 by Peter Pindeo, Fox News. The Democrat mayor vows to keep Minneapolis safe haven for illegal immigrants. We love you. In 948 likes, which, well, yeah, of course, they love their voters. Florida 1 says Minnesota is learning from past mistakes. They know the truth. And you have, again, Representative Omar, Fateh and Ilhan Omar, it says these are not Americans, getting 555 likes. Judah says, so happy to not see his face anymore, getting 603 likes. And again, they say that now. I don't think he's going to fade away from politics. But, yeah, I don't think, a lot of people are saying Sharia law is going to be trending. It'll be there soon. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. But, as always, let me know your thoughts because be fascinated to hear what you have to say. I'm going over to the business blunder of the day of Kroger recalling a candle because, whoops, it's a little too flammable. Now, this brought to us thanks to the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission, perhaps the only useful government website, though it's a pretty low bar. And they say, quote, the Kroger company recalls Halloween-themed skeleton wax candles due to a fire hazard. So you can see the little cute little skeleton. It looks like it was a rubber ducky, which I don't know why I don't know how it's Halloween themed. But nevertheless, it's a little candle. Now, it's going to recall 3,680 units. And they say, quote, the hazard is the candle contains ornaments that are flammable, posing a fire hazard and burn hazards, which, yes, not only is wax flammable, but the little toys inside are as well, which one would think if you have a candle, the contents of that candle carrier thingamajig, yeah, they're probably flammable too. I'm personally not too surprised by this. Now, they say, quote, and the recall involves Halloween-themed skeleton wax candle, which is a white candle with a black plastic bowl that includes skeleton and pumpkin ornaments and a duck candle. The plastic container bears misspelled warning labels. Oh, no. Or maybe they're just dyslexic like me, or debatably, I don't know. Instead of warning, it says wanning, which, yeah, they forgot the R. Yeah, they say wanning, plastic container, and ornaments are flammable. They say other labels on the container include a red $7 price sticker and a warning label that reads, this product is not intended for use or accessibility by children 12 years of age or younger. Made in China, and of course, the model number is D310800CN01. They say consumers should immediately stop using the recalled handle and return them to any Kroger for a full refund in the original form of payment. Now, this is a candle, so maybe I should be surprised that there have been 38 houses burned down by now. It's just lack of common sense in America. But again, silver lining, the guy had this very important recall. It's good that no incidents have been reported, so no one's passed away, no one's had property damage because of this. And apparently these are sold at Kroger stores nationwide, including Dillon's, Fred Meyer, Fry's, which Yeah, it used to be an electronics store. Fun fact for another day. Well, no, we'll do that now. The Fry's family started a grocery store way back in the day on the West Coast. The father sold the store, and then the sons took that money and started Fry's Electronics. So the name of Fry's grocery store is still here, but no longer family owned. This now concludes Fun Fact of the Day, which I'm great for trivia night, as long as it's not sports related. Now, they say there's also sold at Smith & King Scoopers from September 2025 to October 2025 for about $10. They're imported by Carroll Accessories of Los Angeles, California. But again, it is silly, but in theory, there are people in the quality assurance department when you're looking, again, you're being a major store like Kroger. No one's going to remember this plastic, no one's going to remember this candle company's name. They usually remember the biggest logo that's involved with any recall, and when you're carrying these types of products, you should be taking careful or special care that they're all on the up and up. So I got to say, Kroger, you are also, in fact, the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, try to get 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so click that button. I greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down in comments. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback. Let me know how to make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone, everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.